Greetings, prospective freelancers. I am Failure to Report, and today we're going to be having a chat about Anthem as she sits with the Day 1 live patch. Now, to give this video some quick framing, I started my time with Anthem during the closed alpha, played both of the VIP and open betas, and I've been messing with the full game since the early access launch on the 15th of February. And I've had some time to put the Day 1 live patch through its paces as well. I've had a lot of people asking me outright for weeks if Anthem is a buy or not, but I really don't agree with making a review or a buy or not to buy video until I've properly given a game, especially an online game like Anthem, enough time to properly test it and see what it's all about. Like, nothing drives me crazier than when I see someone put out a game review after they've racked up a total playtime of like 5 hours. Yeah? 5 hours into the game and you're trying to pass off an in-depth review? Okay, I'm sure that's reliable. Anyways, with that introduction out of the way, let's cut to the chase. Anthem is a sci-fi loot shooter where you play as a freelancer, which is this game's fancy word for Iron Man exosuit pilot. You start the game off as a new member of the Freelancers on their most dangerous mission yet, to silence a cataclysmic storm caused by an ancient alien relic. Things don't go according to plan and the mission fails in the most spectacular fashion, with almost everybody either going mad or dying. The game's story arc is honestly pretty cliche. It's one of those my path to redemption and return to glories, where you begin taking on any job you can in order to earn your keep until the government gives you a high priority contract and sets you on the path to refacing the Heart of Rage where it all began and fell apart years ago. Now, first and foremost, the writing in the campaign is honestly pretty terrible. This isn't Dragon Age Origins BioWare or even Mass Effect quality story. The characters are all pretty bland and you just genuinely feel apathetic towards basically everything happening outside of the main storyline. This isn't helped by how you interact with them either. Being forced to run all over the hub city Fort Tarsis to have short conversation blocks with 10 different citizens I'm assuming I should care about, which 90% of those conversations are just them crying about their woe is me life problems, only to be forced to go out and do any mission, upon which returning, you get to have another conversation block with them about the exact same thing you were just talking to them about earlier. Basically, here's what I want you to do. Sit down with somebody you know and record yourself having a conversation about anything. Let's say the weather. Now go back to your computer and break up that conversation into 10 segments. Now, I want you to watch one segment of that conversation each morning. That's what interacting with people in Fort Tarsis feels like. Just riveting, let me tell you. Now, I also regret to inform viewers that Anthem has gone the route of Destiny, in which the lion's share of the lore and world building happens in the Codex. There are many entries that will give you a much deeper understanding of the game's backstory and plot than any conversation you ever have outside of the main story. I seriously finished the entire campaign before I had any clue that the primary antagonist in Anthem's campaign is basically just an angry, power-hungry guy, and that the real threat to Anthem is a ghost of Anthem's past, looming to return. There's even a cutscene tie-in after you beat the campaign, but you have no idea what it is or what it's about unless you've been collecting the cajillion codex entries that are scattered all throughout the game and reading them. So, it's pretty much Destiny. Now, while Anthem isn't going to be winning any awards for the launch day storytelling, if you frame the game's main campaign story as just a setup of what is to come, it is actually kind of interesting. BioWare is looking to do a living narrative with Anthem where story and content will be rolled out over time, and after beating the campaign and catching up on the plethora of codex logs, I am genuinely interested in what is to come with Anthem's lore. It's just a shame that it isn't presented in a better fashion that every player is going to get engaged through. Now, speaking further to the living narrative is BioWare's plan for Anthem's lifespan. They've made many statements about wanting Anthem to have a living world that they add to over time, and for a lot of people that instantly brings to mind DLCs and expansions. So, to quell some of the stupid silly crap I've seen from the subreddit all the way to Facebook, BioWare has stated that there is no charged DLC for at least the first year. That means any additional content that comes to Anthem is free of charge. Unlike Destiny, there's no season pass crap to deal with, which means the player base isn't getting forked off into different directions, and you aren't screwed over with content if you don't pay another $40 to $60 for add-on content. How is this miracle possible? Anthem features a cosmetic store. In this shop, they offer rotating cosmetics from emotes, armor materials, shaders, and armor cosmetics. Leading up to launch, there was no small amount of little childish rage, pitchfork, lynch mobbing against Anthem because BioWare said they were trading paid DLC for a cosmetic store. While I could understand some people being concerned about having cosmetics being tied to a store, even though this is usually a pretty fair approach that's very little outrage ever, see Elite Dangerous, because Anthem is made by BioWare and published by Electronic Arts, it led to non-stop cryathlon by people who either got secondhand inaccurate information on how the monetization was going to be implemented, or people who would literally take anything that BioWare did with Anthem and find some excuse to rage over it. You know, like the people who are going,
"But Failure, this isn't like when I would buy a full-price game in 1995 that had no DLC and cut content, even though a full-price game in 1995 at $60 would be over $100 today with inflation."
That's right, you little rage babies. If you wanted developers to sell games at the same prices as they did back then when we didn't have DLC, they would have to sell their games at $100. Stop acting like you're being ransomed for paying $60 on a full-price game that doesn't have paid DLC. I mean, technically, if you want to compare metrics and everything to today's prices back then when there wasn't DLC, you're buying Anthem for $35, not $60 in 1995. So I'm just saying, compared to other AAA titles out there, we're getting off pretty good since it's only $60 and you don't have to shell out another $50 or more for a season pass with lackluster content. So look, Anthem's cosmetic store is incredibly fair. Not just because everything sold there is vanity item that has zero impact on gameplay, but because you can buy any item out of the store with real money transactions or with in-game currency. I haven't had any issue buying the majority of the cosmetics offered so far with in-game currency. I actually spent $35 on premium currency during launch just to demo out the store when the game came out, and I didn't even need it. I've since been trying to find some things to spend the premium currency on because the majority of the cosmetics that I liked were in-game currency only. That's right, there are multiple items that you can't even spend real money on if you wanted to. If there should be any outrage over Anthem's cosmetic sales, it should be from whales like me, because I can't throw my wallet at anything I want. The stark difference in monetization we normally are used to versus the industry standard is only more evident if you compare it to a game like Destiny 2, another sci-fi loot shooter made by Bungie and published by Activision. It is chock full of literal loot boxes renamed engrams. You can't open the store and buy a specific item you want like in Anthem. You have to gamble away on engrams and hope that you get the item you want. The armor packs out of those engrams have in-game stats, can be dismantled for materials, and this is on top of paying $30 per DLC, of which there are now like 3 DLC releases and 1 paid full expansion, with another 2 DLCs to come out this year. So, while Activision has slashed the prices on Destiny 2 currently because it's a shallow husk of a game, if you were buying all of its content when it came out, you were looking at $60 for Destiny 2 at launch, $40 for the year 1 pass, or $30 per DLC if you didn't want to go the season pass route. Then $40 for Destiny 2 Forsaken's expansion, then another $40 for the year 2 pass. $150 just to be current with the game as content was being released. That isn't even touching the cosmetic loot box shop. Let's throw that against Anthem's really quick. Oh, $60 for a year of playing the full game with zero need to use real money for cosmetics? Nice, I guess it's not that bad after all. Alright, that's my preaching time on cosmetics and monetization. Let's get to the game itself. Anthem is a mixed bag of really great things and really bad things. And this is one of the things that I got into it with chat frequently when I was streaming leading up to the release of Anthem. So many children wanted to bash this game for monetization that wasn't even accurate or fair, instead of bashing Anthem for its legitimate problems. So here are a few of the big ones off the top of my head. The user interface is absolutely terrible. It's very clear that Anthem is a console port and that PC is more of an afterthought. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad it came to PC, but it feels like a console game. Many menus are incredibly tedious or entirely redundant. There are many screens that make you stop and think, was this entire game developed by half a dozen different studios and then just mashed together for launch? Clutter is also a major issue. The crafting menu was a perfect example of this. There's a slider for picking the rarity of an item you want to craft, but it doesn't seem to function, yet item selection screen and crafting has a just dozens of blueprints because they show each individual rarity instead of consolidating them into one rarity using the slider. However, on the day one patch, it seems BioWare was watching Reddit because this has been combined into one, similar to how the mission launch screen was a cluttered mess, and yet the day one launch version has a much more streamlined interface now for selecting what kind of activity you want to do or the mission type you're interested in. So while the interface is a ham-fisted mess, BioWare has been very fast to address many issues brought up by player feedback, both in terms of the interface and gameplay itself. It's one of the reasons I'm very hesitant to hold quality of life issues against this game. But if you're looking to buy Anthem right now, it's fair to warn you about them, even if BioWare is going ham on fixing them. Now, one issue that is clearly not a simple fix is the servers. I've been told by many people, and even remember reading at some point from tweets of the developers, that Anthem servers are running off of Amazon's AWS. However, after playing Anthem from closed alpha all the way to day one patch, I'm left with the impression that either AWS is a steaming pile of dog crap, or they're using some kind of hybrid peer-to-peer and AWS, because server performance is absolute trash. You will constantly see people rubber banding, or more than likely, you'll just notice how out of sync the servers are once you start branching into Grandmaster difficulties after reaching level 30, and you're instantly ganked by a sniper you never even had a chance of dodging because he's already fired by the time you see the targeting animation. This is also very evident in Titan fights, which require you to dodge pulsing lava waves or fireball explosions. There is nothing quite as rage-inducing in Anthem as getting disconnected from a mission you're playing just to have your whole party need to back out because you can't get back in. Even though BioWare assures us people who are suffering from getting disconnected are able to relaunch, and you should get a prompt to reconnect to your mission in progress. Out of the dozens of disconnects I've had, I've only had the option to reconnect maybe twice. Twice. On the eve of the official launch, Anthem servers are a huge liability, and it's going to be one of the most ridiculed performance issues this game has. Period. I guarantee it. Now, while staying in the same vein of performance, I've heard many people say that Anthem has really bad frame rate issues. Now, my rig is starting to get pretty dated. My GPU is a GTX 980 on an older Gen i7. And I can personally say that I have had no issues with frame rate on all settings high. On Ultra, I don't notice much improvement in graphics quality, but my frame rate does seem to be pretty much the same as on high, except in some situations where there are just an insane amount of abilities and combos firing off all at once. Anthem does, however, seem to run very CPU heavy in comparison to any similar game. So, to say the least, Anthem is definitely not optimized yet. Now, let's touch on gameplay then, because as we have all learned from some other games out there, you can have the prettiest gold-plated turd ever made with $250 million, but it's still just a squeezed-out turd if the gameplay is bad. Anthem didn't set out to try to reinvent the wheel. It is very evident after just a few hours of playing Anthem that BioWare took popular elements from other games and hybridized them into one game. It has the gunplay of Mass Effect and The Division, a huge focus on ability use and combo chaining similar to Final Fantasy Online, the sci-fi atmosphere of Destiny, and the agility and mobility focus borrowed heavily from Warframe. And the flight also feels really fun, if not a little limited with how quickly your thrusters overheat. The class variety also feels very on point. While there are 4 different javelins, which are essentially classes in Anthem, how those javelins play can greatly be influenced with their loadouts. Almost all of the javelins have a solid mix of abilities you can equip in the 2 ability slots that will have you being more close quarters brawling or setting up combos from afar. You can also take a mix and match to have a more varied loadout. Now, I will say that trying to play all 4 javelins leaves me feeling sloppy for missing out on the nuances of each specific javelin versus when I was only playing Interceptor at a pretty high competency level. But I think that just lends more credibility to just how varied the different javelins can be with their loadouts. Now, one of the biggest questions I get from people about Anthem is if I think it has the staying power to be a multiplayer loot shooter. And I really didn't want to weigh in on this until after I had hit the proper end game. I've been to level 30, I've done Grandmaster tiers, So now I feel like it's more relevant for me to talk about it. So here's the deal, guys. If you're one of those people who love playing Diablo 3, pushing torment tiers and running rifts, but you kept wanting a sci-fi shooter version of that gameplay loop, you're going to probably love Anthem. There are definitely concerns about repetitive gameplay in Anthem, and that issue is only going to be addressed if BioWare can keep a constant stream of fresh content and variety post-launch, similar to how Warframe tries to do it. However, at its core, the gameplay itself is incredibly fun, and depending on the difficulty setting, as well as who you're playing with, it can be very challenging. Downing your first legendary Ancient Ash Titan on Grandmaster is incredibly satisfying. I mean, sure, you probably have anxiety shakes and you scream more obscenities and slurs during that fight than the rest of your life combined, but you imploded that behemoth and got the loot. So good on you. One of the core gameplay loops, though, is loot. And I'm very happy to say that Anthem goes in the complete opposite direction of games like Destiny 2, where your progress is hard-locked and time-gated behind milestones or other weekly reset gimmicks. Want to spend 40 hours bleeding into your keyboard farming for gear? You can do that in Anthem, versus Destiny 2, where once you've spent those powerful engram rewards for that week, and just got the same piece of gear you already had, or in a slot you didn't need, or worse, the exact same item that you got the week before, you really didn't have any incentive to bother logging in again. There was no point in playing. Anthem is very much in the same vein as Diablo or similar loot chasing games, as endgame gear classes of Masterwork and Legendaries are a chase of their own to get the specific item you want for your build. And then you have the chase to find the perfect one of that item that has the exact item modifier as you want on it. To this end, I also feel it's worth mentioning that should you get that specific item you want, you can unlock the blueprint by completing a simple challenge with that item and then dismantle it, and then craft the item endlessly provided you have the resources as a method of re-rolling the secondary stats. I like this. This is a good feature. In the end though, people just want to hear if they should buy Anthem or not. And with most games, I feel like it's usually pretty easy to give a yes or no answer. But Anthem is honestly kind of a unique situation with BioWare's plans to have a living narrative with content updates post-launch, with the amount of attention they're putting into player feedback. I mean, seriously, if you go into that game subreddit, you will see an insane amount of developer activity. Like, I haven't seen that level of involvement with the community in a very long time. So, combine all the we will have to see factors of this game with the fact that it's a very different genre and a gameplay style that many people have just no experience with, it's really hard to say yes, you should go out and buy it or not. I think the gameplay is absolutely fun, some of the best I've had in a long time, when all the supporting aspects and elements are working correctly. I think BioWare could absolutely keep Anthem feeling fresh and enjoyable if they keep supporting it. However, would I recommend somebody goes out and spends $60 or more on Anthem, on my word, with the state that it's in right now? The answer to that is no. I don't think you should buy $60 worth of Anthem. There are a lot of issues in the game right now that still need patching or fixing. The server performance is way too sporadic, and it's possible you just might not like this kind of gameplay. Luckily, however, you can try Anthem out for just $5 through Origin Access after February 22nd. Is Anthem worth trying for $5? Absolutely. Now, because there are just so many aspects of this game that covering it in detail would literally take me days to try to piece together in a video and end up with an hour-long video, which most people wouldn't even finish, I'm just going to cut it here. I feel like this video does a decent job of addressing most of the main concerns and gameplay issues. However, if you have concerns or questions about Anthem, please feel free to send them over in a comment. I'm going to do my best to try to reply to as many of them as possible for the next week. I'm basically going on vacation here Friday, so I won't be distracted with actually playing Anthem or any other game. So I'm going to try to use that time to get a little bit more involved in the comments than I have been in the last month or so. So there's that. As always, I am FailureToReport. I can't thank all of you enough for the time you spend here, as well as hopping into streams to keep me company while I mash my keyboard and get outraged. You guys and girls are literally the best viewers out there, and I can't thank you all enough. So with that said, I'll see you out there, or until next time.